me somewhere I'd never be.
Alright, congrats on the album. It's a heart wrencher as expected.
Yeah, it's like sort of my MO these days. It's just to be as like pain, it's like that TikTok where they're like, what's the worst pain you've ever felt that's not physical? That's what I try to make every song. So,
Wow, okay. If that's not a sell, then I don't know what is. I feel like I've been watching a lot of memes pop up from your page in
yes.
anticipation. And they are like brutal. There are like some really sad memes.
Yeah, my fans are really good at making the memes, and I
Yeah.
am basically a meme account at this point. So, but it does feel good to at least have them, have them care enough to do it. So,
Do you
it feels
orchestrate any of them? Do you
none.
like breadcrumb anything so with the hopes of people like memeing it?
No, I usually just go on Twitter and I'm just like, who has the memes today? And they're like, say less. And then they like maybe 2, 3 hours later, like I'm stacked, filled to the brim with memes, like
That's
I'm just like,
crazy.
yeah, I'm just absolutely like, yeah, it's befuddling sometimes, just like how much there is to like, but to deal with, but I let them all sink in. So it's good.
Mm. And they call themselves the Squid Squad? Is that right? The
That is,
Melchors I understand, but why Squid Squad? What is the
yeah.
backstory there?
So during the pandemic, like at the beginning, I was going live every single night, like on Instagram,
Wow.
and I think I did that for like I think it was like a month in a row. Like I was just like every single night because what else are we gonna do? And then one time somebody commented a squid, and then everybody just started commenting squids, and it was just like this whole squid thing or whatever. And I don't know, there's no lyric that involves squid. There's not really too many marine life lyrics that are in my songs anyway, but they just latched onto it, and once you can't really make up the name of your fan club or whatever.
We can try, but I
You
think I like
try.
Squid Squad. It's got an element of intrigue. I think it also sets you a challenge. Like, you can pay a little homage to the Squid Squad later. Like,
Of
even if it's
course,
just
of
like,
course.
you know, if you had like a lyric about like tentacles of pain or some shit like that.
Exactly. I was
People be
thinking
like,
about getting a squid tattoo. Like if after the
yeah,
many tattoos already, just getting a squid one might be good. So
where would
just
you
to
get it? I can imagine it like on your heel and like wrapping around your heel or some shit.
oh,
It's kind of
that would
funny.
be cool. I don't have
Yeah.
any. I have no tattoos like below the waist or like below the rib. So maybe that would be the first one. You know, getting a
Mm,
heel tattoo. I'm down.
great content. You gotta let
Yeah.
me know when you're doing it.
I will.
I'll come along.
I live streamed the last tattoos that I got, which was
Ah.
like in theory a good idea, but the noise is pounding on an Instagram live
Uh,
or on a
yeah.
TikTok live. It's like it's kind of punishing. So it'd have
Yeah,
to
you
be
might have
like
to stick and poke or something.
hmm, that would be a
Hmm.
good idea. Okay, stick and poke my Achilles tendon with a squid. I think that'd be good.
Nothing sounds more enjoyable. That sounds like a day at the spa.
Day at the spa, yeah. Should we get our nails done or should we stick and poke our Achilles tendons? I
Definitely
think
the latter. When did you
definitely.
start noticing this fan base starting to swell? Because I'm conscious you were in a band for a hot minute before you went solo.
Yeah.
Um, what were those early days?
Oh, the early days were fun. The other early days, I learned a lot about like what to do, but like most I learned about like what not to do. Just being in a band and just realizing like why you play the shows or make the music and if you're like basically the best thing that I learned from being in a band where I like really wasn't like the center. I like was just like basically a hired gun that wasn't really paid. So I wasn't really hired, more of just a gun. But the biggest thing I learned was that like if you are going to make no money, you might as well make no money doing your own dreams versus like making someone else's come true. So once I realized that, I was like, I might as well just like do it myself and everything. So that was
Hmm.
like the early days. But even before then, just like playing, pizza places and restaurants and bars and everything, I learned a lot about just being able to like take a punch and just, doesn't really matter. And it's kind of funny anyway. So that's why I kind of like the Squid Squad and all the memes and everything. So it all connects.
Okay, it's all like a part of the ecosystem. But that's a good point. You don't want to watch your dreams go down the sink, you know? Like you really want your own to thrive.
Yeah. It's not a sync. That's not a sync that I'd like to, dive into. It's there's plenty of other syncs to,
Uh,
sort of clean yourself off in. And I think the main thing is to just like take care of yourself. And, as much as like you want to be friends with people, it's a hard like landscape because you're just like friends, and it's like a lot of like, relationships intertwine with like music business and stuff like that. So, you can sort of get not like taken advantage of, but there's moments where you can just feel like at least you are. And I think moving forward from that, I was like, as a solo artist with like a band, to make sure they are all like, really cared for and everything, because
yeah.
I've been on the other side where I haven't been exactly,
Yeah,
so.
respect. Okay, now that you've tackled the sophomore album, do you feel like you've ironed out who Adam Melchor is as an artist?
I think so. I think so. Yeah. Last year I put out a song called "What a Damn Shame," and it was like a lot more like alternative and like rock than I normally did, and I was like thinking about like teetering on like maybe approaching that as like what I wanted to do, and then I quickly realized that it wasn't for me, and I learned so much from that song, and now I really feel like I know who I am, like, who I identify with. And especially this album, like there's a lot more like piano involved, and like just
Mm.
very much like still lyric focused, and but there's just like a little bit more chances being taken than before, which I think I always want to grow, but you do have to sort of solidify in what you think at least is like, your MO. So like just always like having good lyrics, storytelling and whatnot, and and then making a bunch of weird noises. So that's pretty much it.
I agree that I think, like, on first listen, that your lyrics really stand out from the rest. Tell me
Oh,
about your background
okay.
in slam poetry.
Oh my goodness. My background in slam poetry is not too much of a background.
I've had a
I,
watch. It's pretty impressive.
oh my God. Yeah, I quickly realized basically with slam poetry, I went to a school called Montclair State University, and
Okay.
this is deep diving shit, Tate. And this
That's
I'm
what we
proud of you for
expect.
finding this one. Yeah. I went to this place called Montclair State, and they had a poetry club that was awesome. And I had no idea what slam poetry was. I thought it was just like writing poetry. So I was just writing it. And then the person who was running it, this kid named Tim was like, he's like, yo, if you ever thought about like performing any of these? And I was like, literally not once. I just doing it for myself, whatever. He's like, oh yeah, maybe you should try. So it was kind of like a monologue, basically, so I was like treated as such and whatnot. And so I did it. And then that year, for some reason, we just did really well. And like we entered this competition, and it was like 65 schools like all competing against each other, and we got like fourth place in the country. It was like so strange.
Do you
But
think that was strange though? Because the coincidence is that you joined the team.
yeah, well, I mean, I guess, I mean, I wanted to win. It's just weird to make it like competitive, like make poetry
Yeah.
competitive. It's like so strange. But I think I quickly realized after that, after seeing so many people in schools and like all over the place and like talk about it, I was just like, I think in slam poetry, I'm better off as an audience member than a participant.
Hmm.
You know,
That's
there's
interesting.
so many people who have so many like other things to say, and like slam poetry is rooted in a lot of like, like culture that is like sort of discriminated against and everything. And like as a white guy, I don't really have much to say, that's like too. So a lot of my poems were coming off, more as like funny or comedy sort of things. But then I was like, there's actually like there's a lot of things that are, I don't need to be a voice here. I can just be a listener, and that's how I enjoy it now. So I enjoy listening and being an audience member more than actually performing it. But man, it's been so long. So those videos are still up there, if anybody's
Yeah,
interested.
they are still up there. I'll put them in the this video description
No,
maybe. I'm
no,
giving you
don't
some
do
extra promo.
that. No, people, I'll be a canceled man, maybe, like I
Not
feel
at
like it.
all.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
No, no, no.
Yeah,
You're not cancelled.
thank you so much for saying that. If you say so, that's good.
Yeah, not yet, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, well, let's talk specifics about Here Goes Nothing.
Yeah.
I really found that like this was structured very satisfyingly. You are like at the very beginning of the album, you talk about not being afraid. You talk about being afraid of being in love. In I'm Afraid I Love You. And then the next song, I'm Ready, opens with the lines of you confessing your love. And then you go into, it travels through cry. It seems like heartbreak. And then like growth at the end, where you end on like a message to your family and yourself. Where was your like headspace over this period of writing the album?
I can't tell you where my head was, but my heart was definitely like, pulled in so
Destroyed.
many directions. Yeah,
Yeah.
distraught. But yeah, I kind of wanted to, and that's awesome that you got that because I sort of did it on purpose to make it feel like it's like
Mm.
a revolving door, because I think I was in an on and off again, relationship for so long during the pandemic, and it was long distance, and it was just like it was so insane, and it was a lot of unsuredness, and but then like you can drink like 2 cups of coffee and be like, okay, that's it, we're doing this, you know what I mean? It just like it was so day to day, and I think like at the grand scheme of things, we would sort of go through this thing of like, okay, man, like I really love you and all this stuff, and then being like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do this, and we accept that, and then like once you accept it, it's like you get like one more introduction to the person, and then all of a sudden you're like back in the loop, so that's kind of what I wanted to make the album feel like, in a sense, where it's like if you start it, like if you end with Sorry Adam and you go into I'm Afraid I Love You, it's kind of just like repeating the story again. So it was, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like kind of just it's just like a one of those hamster wheels,
Yeah,
in
it's
the heart,
cyclical. Yeah.
very much like snake eating its own tail, yeah, that was like the intention of it.
And then you've also thrown in some like Dorothy Wizard of Oz imagery of being like, in my head, when I saw Dorothy and then I realized it was Wizard of Oz Dorothy, I was like, oh, long way from home,
Yeah,
displacement. Like there's a lot of different feelings going on.
yeah,
Um,
and that one's
but
just, oh, sorry,
yeah, no,
sorry,
no,
you go.
no, no. You tell me about the song.
Please,
I'm not
please,
going to
no,
tell
no,
you
you go.
anything.
No, you keep going.
Well, I was saying, like, as I was listening, I was like, this is so interesting because I had to, like, come to a moment of, like, reconciling what I think, who I think you are, of, like, someone who, in my head, is in touch with emotions and, like, somewhat sensitive in a good way. But then you've got songs like Cry, where you're not, like, crying in front of people, you're afraid of being in love. Like, all these sort of things where I was just like, oh, this is really interesting to hear this perspective of you.
Yeah. I wanted to like, I think like when it comes to like on and off again things, or just like being in a relationship, there's always so many ups and downs. And like,
Mm.
there's sometimes you're like one version of yourself and one times you're others, and all of those versions are valid. And I think with Dorothy, especially, it was like, I wanted to, I sort of felt like this song is sort of about feeling like let down by somebody, but just like maybe in the future it being okay. But in that sense, I kind of wanted, I was like watching a lot of musicals at the time too. And for that, like there's so many things about like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, even in culture or whatever songs, but there was like the one thing that I wanted to do was like a song from like the perspective of the house, and like in
Mm.
Kansas, where it's like she leaves and then she goes to this magical world and it's still like not enough, and she's like, okay, I want to go back, and then it like takes like the house like accepts, obviously her back in the end, but and it's sort of just like that like reconciliation, where it's like, oh, like should I take this person back, or not, and maybe down the line it'll be better, and whatnot. So, but yeah, it's different versions of Adam all throughout, but it all just sort of makes up what I was going through, at the time.
Totally. Are you a theater kid?
Yeah.
I feel like you were a theater
I
kid.
definitely, I wasn't exactly, but I actually, it's funny enough, I was in a bunch of plays when I was like pretty young, and then I stopped doing it in high school because I was just doing a lot of drugs. And then once I graduated high school,
Nice.
I started working. Yeah, I started working like more. I went to school for opera, so that was very theater
Yeah.
based, and I was like friends with a lot of the theater kids there, and I was like a camp counselor at like a theater camp with my sister. Me and her ran it in the summers, and but I just really love musicals. I'm just like kind of sappy, and I love like a good heartfelt story. So, like my favorite thing in like we were talking about scary movies the other day with like the band and everything, and they're like, oh yeah, have you seen this one? I was like, no, and I was just like, you know what, I really like movies that make me go like this, like, oh, like that's my like that's my kind of movie. So
That's your
I
bag.
guess
Yeah, yeah.
that's sort of my bag in that sense.
All right, I'm conscious of how much time we have left. So I'm going to leave you with one final question.
Okay.
And this question is a question of your own, naturally.
Okay.
What is the guiltiest you've ever felt?
Wow. What is the guiltiest I've ever felt? It's a hard one. There's definitely the guiltiest I've ever felt. there's so many choices, there's so many choices. I think honestly, the guiltiest I think I've ever felt is sometimes, I guess in just like in relationships, just like realizing, you were the person like, who maybe didn't make the mistake, but didn't like forgive the mistake like in time, and I think forgiving yourself is like a really big part in forgiving other people. That's kind of what Sorry Adam is about. And I think that like in this whole thing, I think the guiltiest I felt was just letting like everybody down by sort of like, sort of self-sabotaging, and that with like communication and, all that stuff, you can actually like branch out to other people and like be okay and forgive them. And, just we're all human. So I also think that the guiltiest I've ever felt is like, I don't even, yeah, I guess that's it. I'm not like too much. Oh, actually, you know what? One time I ran from the cops when I was in high school, and I never got caught. And that's probably the guiltiest I ever felt, like by
You
illegal.
feel bad for not like for them not catching you, and you feel like
Well,
you
I
should have been
felt guilty.
reprimanded.
I was definitely doing what they were chasing me for, but
Ah,
they
okay.
still have not caught me. So, maybe they'll see this, and
Yeah.
I'll be subpoenaed, but it was a very minor offense, so it was.
I want to know more. I want to know more, but we won't put it in this.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Adam Melchor, it's a pleasure as always.
Uh,
Congratulations.
thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope I get to see you soon.
Absolutely.